In life, sooner or later, someone will try to humiliate you, publicly, cruelly, and with the sole intention of making you feel small. Most people react in anger and lose. But Machiavelli knew something the rest of the world forgets. The greatest revenge is not in the shout, but in the silence before the strike. Today, you will learn exactly how to turn humiliation into power and why your enemies will regret ever underestimating you. In the world Machiavelli inhabited, power was not merely seized. It was preserved through discipline, foresight, and the ability to govern oneself before governing others. And nowhere is this more evident than in the moment of humiliation. Imagine the scene. A crowded hall, eyes fixed upon you. A rival makes a cutting remark, their words chosen like a blade, designed to slice not the skin, but the dignity. Murmurs ripple through the air. A lesser man would flush with anger, his voice rising, his hands trembling. He would answer instantly, lashing back in defense of his pride. And in that instant, he would have already lost. Machiavelli understood this truth with the clarity of a surgeon's hand. Emotions are the leash by which men are led to ruin. When you react in the heat of the moment, you are not acting, you are being acted upon. Your adversary is now the one dictating your moves, pulling the strings of your composure. The moment you let anger direct you, the moment you raise your voice or betray your irritation, you have shifted the battle onto their terms. And on their terms you will fall. Control in this moment is not a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate display of mastery. To the crowd, it is not the insult that will be remembered, but how you carried yourself in its shadow. If you respond with calm, with a face unmoved and a tone steady as stone, you begin to turn the tide without lifting a sword. Silence in the face of provocation is not surrender. It is the tightening of the bowstring. Your rival wants a reaction because they know that reaction is messy, unplanned, and irreversible. If they can pull you into a public quarrel, they strip you of dignity before the eyes of others. They want to watch you bleed pride in real time. But Machiavelli would counsel you to resist the bait. For nothing terrifies a man more than an enemy who smiles while swallowing the insult whole. This is not to say you feel nothing. Quite the opposite. Inside, you let the words burn into your memory, each syllable a coal you will later use to stoke the fire of your response. You acknowledge the wound, but you refuse to bleed in public. In this way, you do not give your opponent the pleasure of seeing their strike land. They walk away uncertain. Have they touched a nerve, or has their insult simply vanished into the void of your indifference? That uncertainty becomes your weapon. Machiavelli knew the value of a delayed strike. By refusing to react immediately, you buy yourself the one resource every strategist craves: time. Time to assess the insult's true purpose. Was it meant to provoke you into a mistake? Was it a test of your composure? Or was it a desperate move by an enemy whose power is slipping? Time allows you to see the battlefield clearly, to plan not just an answer, but an outcome. The world admires the man who can master himself. For self-mastery signals strength of a kind most cannot match. The merchant in the market who laughs off a customer's disrespect, the ruler who answers slander with a measured word, the general who ignores a taunt before the battle. All of these men project a singular message: I am not moved by your smallness. And that message, repeated enough, becomes a shield stronger than steel. In the courts of Renaissance Florence, where tongues were as dangerous as daggers, men rose and fell by the way they managed insults. Many thought to protect themselves by speaking louder, striking back in the same breath. But these men often found themselves trapped in feuds they could not win, their reputations stained by their own lack of control. The survivors, the ones whose names were whispered with respect, were those who let the insult hang unanswered, their silence speaking volumes. Silence, however, is not inaction. It is preparation. The one who waits is not the one who loses interest, but the one who sharpens his knife in the shadows. Machiavelli would advise you to store every detail, the exact words used, the tone, the audience present. These are not meaningless scraps. They are the map to your enemy's weakness. In time, you will know exactly when and where to answer, and your answer will not merely balance the scales. It will tilt them so heavily in your favor that your rival will wish they had held their tongue. But for now, in this first moment, you must resist the instinct to defend yourself. The desire to strike back is strong, almost irresistible. That is precisely why mastering it elevates you above others. For every man can be angered, but few can be insulted and yet appear untouched. That appearance of calm, of unshaken dignity, is a currency far more valuable than momentary satisfaction. In Machiavelli's eyes, the insult itself is not the danger. It is your reaction to it that determines whether you win or lose. The man who insults you has revealed something about himself: his envy, his insecurity, his desperation to provoke. He has played his hand openly. You, on the other hand, have revealed nothing. This imbalance is the first victory. The crowd may think you are indifferent, or they may suspect you are plotting. Let them wonder. Let your opponent wonder most of all, for in the silence after an insult, there grows a tension far heavier than any shouted exchange. That tension is yours to command. It is the unseen pressure that will, in time, bend your rival to you without them even realizing they have submitted. In the courts of power, humiliation is rarely an accident. It is a calculated blow meant to leave you diminished not only in your own eyes, but in the judgment of others. Most will treat such moments as personal disasters, believing their reputation has been wounded beyond repair. But Machiavelli would tell you something different. Humiliation, if understood correctly, is not a curse. It is a weapon disguised as a wound, and in the hands of the disciplined, it can be forged into a tool far more dangerous than the insult itself. When someone tries to humiliate you, they are revealing a crucial truth: you matter to them enough to be targeted. No one wastes arrows on an enemy who poses no threat. This should be your first realization. You have, in some way, disturbed their comfort, challenged their position, or disrupted their sense of superiority. That is why they aim to reduce you in the eyes of others. Instead of collapsing under the blow, you can turn this into proof that you are already on the field of consequence. You are not an invisible man. They see you, and they fear what you might become. The key lies in shifting the frame. If you react rashly, the insult stands as a mark of weakness. But if you remain composed, if you show no outward wound, the insult begins to work against its maker. People watching will measure not only the words spoken, but the dignity of the one who receives them. The crowd does not admire the man who snaps back in desperation. They admire the man who takes the hit and stands unshaken, forcing his opponent to look smaller for having struck in the first place. In this way, humiliation becomes a stage. Your composure is the performance, and your rival has already provided the script. Without even lifting a finger, you become the image of restraint, of quiet strength. Others will whisper that the insult was unprovoked, unnecessary, beneath the dignity of the one who delivered it. The public mind shifts subtly, and now your opponent is the one defending his image while you rise in silent contrast. Machiavelli understood that perception rules the hearts of men more than truth. The truth is only what people believe they have seen, and if you can shape what they see, you hold the power. If you play the wronged party with subtlety, never openly pleading for sympathy, but allowing the injustice to be visible, people will rally to your side without you asking. They will speak in your defense when you are not present. They will remember the insult longer than you pretend to. And in their eyes, you become the one worthy of loyalty, for you carried yourself with the calm of a leader, not the panic of a victim. In Renaissance Florence, men often rose in power not through military victories, but through the clever manipulation of public moments like these. A statesman might be insulted in the council chamber, only to respond with such grace that the insult became his greatest advertisement. His enemies, thinking they had wounded him, had in fact done his work for him. They had drawn the eyes of the city to his self-control, his refinement, his discipline. From there, alliances formed quietly. Those who disliked the aggressor began to see in the wronged man a figure they could trust. This is why you must never rush to erase the moment of humiliation. Do not bury it. Let it linger in the air. Let it breathe and expand. For as it does, it begins to work in ways you cannot if you fight it directly. The more your rival appears petty, the more you appear noble by contrast. And that nobility, whether true or staged, will open doors that anger would have kept closed. Of course, leverage is not only about optics. It is also about information. In attempting to humiliate you, your opponent has exposed something about themselves. Perhaps they have shown that they are quick-tempered, unable to control their tongue. Perhaps they have revealed that they view you as a rival worth dismantling. Or perhaps they have betrayed alliances, showing who in the room supports them, who laughs at their words, and who looks away in discomfort. In this moment, you can quietly take note of who is with you and who is against you. The insult becomes a flare in the night sky, illuminating the battlefield in ways that otherwise would remain hidden. You can use this knowledge later, carefully, without haste. Those who laughed at your humiliation may find, in time, that they are excluded from opportunities, their own ambitions quietly blocked. Those who looked away in silence may be drawn closer, for they too understand the sting of being targeted. In this way, your humiliation becomes a sorting tool, a test that reveals the loyalties and fears of those around you. Machiavelli would remind you that the insult itself is only the beginning of the game. The real contest lies in what follows. If you can take that moment and weave it into a larger narrative of your strength, your composure, your inevitability, then the person who tried to humiliate you has unwittingly helped to build your image. They have placed you in the center of attention. They have made you the subject of conversation. And if you hold your posture, every whisper will work in your favor. The beauty of this method is that it requires no immediate retaliation. You are not chasing revenge. You are collecting interest. The humiliation is the seed. You are the patient gardener. And in time, what grows from it will be a weapon of your own making. One that your enemy will not be able to trace back to the moment they first gave it to you. In the struggle for power, truth is a fragile thing. Machiavelli understood that men do not move according to reality, but according to the version of reality they believe. This is why, when humiliation strikes, the most dangerous mistake you can make is to allow your enemy to define the story. If they choose the frame, you are already painted in the colors of their choosing. To survive, and more than survive, to turn the blow into a stepping stone, you must seize control of the narrative. Before it hardens in the minds of those who witnessed it, picture the scene. An insult lands, carefully aimed to undermine your authority. The words echo, and a murmur ripples through the crowd. People glance at you, searching your face for signs of injury. In that moment, they are forming a story about what they have just seen. And if you do nothing, if you leave the insult to breathe on its own, your opponent's version will fill the air unchallenged. They will appear the bold truth teller, you the exposed fraud, whether or not a single part of their attack is grounded in reality. Controlling the narrative begins not with speaking louder, but with speaking last. Let the immediate noise fade. Let your rival enjoy their moment of apparent triumph, for it will make the reversal all the more striking. When the time comes to respond, you must do so with precision, not in anger, but with the calm weight of inevitability. Your words should not sound like defense. They should sound like fact, the kind of fact that leaves no room for argument. Machiavelli would advise that your narrative must be both believable and advantageous. It is not enough to tell the truth. You must tell it in a way that reinforces your strength. For example, if you are accused of weakness, you might allow the public to see you in a moment of decisive action unrelated to the insult, making their minds connect your image with firmness rather than fragility. If you are painted as arrogant, you might arrange an act of deliberate humility, not so grand that it looks staged, but enough to make those who heard the insult question its accuracy. In this way, you do not merely argue against their story, you replace it with one more compelling. In Florence, the men who survived the poison of court politics were not those who fought every insult directly. They were the ones who understood that most people will not remember the insult itself. They will remember the impression left afterward. A statesman could be accused of incompetence one day, and yet, through careful orchestration of events, be seen as the city's savior the next. The accusation would remain only as a faint shadow, erased by the brighter image that followed. To control the narrative, you must understand your audience as well as your enemy. Who is watching? What do they already believe about you? What would they like to believe? People are naturally drawn to stories that confirm their existing views, but they are even more captivated by stories that make them feel part of a revelation. If you can turn your humiliation into a moment of transformation, if you can appear to rise above it in a way that inspires others, they will not only forget the insult, they will carry your new image forward for you. This is where the art of suggestion comes into play. Instead of openly declaring that the insult was false, you might hint at it through subtle displays. You might tell a story not about the insult, but about a time you faced a similar challenge and overcame it. You might act with such consistency and grace that the idea of the insult's truth becomes absurd. The less you appear desperate to correct the record, the more people will assume you have nothing to hide. There is also a darker side to narrative control, one Machiavelli never shied away from. If it serves your interests, you may let the insult stand, but twist its meaning. If they call you ruthless, you may allow that idea to spread, for it may serve to make rivals cautious. If they call you calculating, you may not deny it, letting others believe you are a man whose every move is deliberate. Sometimes the best way to win the narrative is not to erase it, but to bend it into a shape that serves your long-term strategy. When you shape the story, you also shape the memory. Months later, when people recall the incident, they will not remember it as your opponent hoped. They will remember your calmness, your poise, the way events afterward seem to prove them wrong. The insult becomes a footnote, a curiosity, while the image you cultivated becomes the dominant truth in their minds. And once that truth settles in, it is nearly impossible to dislodge. This is why Machiavelli would tell you that controlling the narrative is not an act of vanity. It is an act of survival. In politics, in business, in personal rivalries, the man who defines the story defines the outcome. Your enemy can win the moment, but you can win the memory, and the memory is what endures. Machiavelli knew there is no honor in striking simply for the sake of revenge. A blow delivered too soon is a blow wasted, a reaction that satisfies your emotions but leaves your enemy free to recover. The art lies not in the retaliation itself, but in its timing, waiting until the moment when the wound you inflict will cripple them, when they cannot defend themselves, when the consequences will echo long after the strike is made. This is not cruelty without reason, it is strategy without mercy. When someone humiliates you, they expect your response to come quickly. They imagine you will burn with anger, that you will rush to prove them wrong. This expectation is your shield. By denying them the satisfaction of an immediate fight, you place yourself outside their prediction. You become unpredictable, and unpredictability is a weapon feared by all. While they think the matter is finished, you are watching, waiting, studying. You are not forgetting, you are collecting. Every humiliation has a context. Where it happened, who witnessed it, what it cost you in the eyes of others, but it also exposes your opponent's habits and weaknesses. Perhaps they cannot resist speaking without thinking. Perhaps they rely too heavily on the loyalty of others. Perhaps they act boldly only when they feel secure. By observing them in the days and weeks after the insult, you will begin to see patterns, and patterns are the cracks in any fortress. In the courts of Florence, a man who had been insulted might wait months before answering. He would smile at his enemy, break bread with him, even offer assistance in small matters. His rival would grow comfortable, certain that the insult had been forgotten, certain that his words had left no lasting scar. And then, when the time was right, when alliances shifted, when resources were scarce, when the rival most needed stability, the retaliation would come, so sudden and precise that there was no defense. The effect of such delayed strikes is devastating because they feel inevitable and inescapable. The victim cannot claim surprise. They know in their hearts why the blow has come. But by then, it is too late. Their position is weakened, their support uncertain, their options few. This is the moment Machiavelli prized, not the first chance to strike, but the most effective one. You must also understand that timing is not only about the enemy's vulnerability. It is about the audience. If you strike too soon, the crowd sees only a quarrel between two hot-headed men. But if you wait until the insult has faded in their minds, until the aggressor has revealed further flaws, your retaliation appears not as petty vengeance, but as justified action. People will not see you as cruel. They will see you as decisive, even righteous. They will believe you acted only when it was necessary, and necessity always wins more allies than rage. To achieve this, you must train yourself to think in seasons, not moments. Just as a farmer does not plant in winter or harvest in spring, you must learn to let the ground ripen beneath your enemy's feet. You may know how to harm them now, but is now the moment when that harm will have the greatest effect? Or will patience make the result 10 times as severe? The discipline to wait is not weakness. It is the proof that you value victory more than momentary satisfaction. Sometimes, the strike will not even look like revenge to anyone but you. It may come in the form of an opportunity denied, a partnership dissolved, a whisper placed in the right ear. It may be as public as a calculated humiliation in front of the same kind of crowd where they once tried to diminish you, or as private as removing them from the game entirely without anyone knowing your hand was involved. Machiavelli understood that the most effective punishments are often those that seem to happen naturally, as though fate itself has delivered the reckoning. The delay also works on another level. It gnaws at your opponent's mind. If they are wise, they will suspect you are waiting for your moment, and this suspicion will live in them like a slow poison. Every setback they face will make them wonder if you are behind it. Every failed plan will carry the ghost of your presence. They will fear the strike long before it comes, and that fear will weaken them more than the blow itself ever could. In politics, in war, in personal rivalries, those who win are not the ones who act fastest. They are the ones who act best. A sword swung in haste may miss its mark, but a sword drawn after careful calculation will cut cleanly. You must condition yourself to value the perfection of the strike above the satisfaction of delivering it. That is the Machiavellian way. The enemy may start the war with a single insult, but you will finish it with a single move that leaves no possibility of return. In the eyes of Machiavelli, humiliation is never the end. It is the beginning. The fool meets insult with noise and fury, burning his strength in a single moment of reaction. The wise man meets it with silence, turns it into leverage, bends the story to his will, and waits until the perfect hour to strike. You have learned that mastery over yourself is the first defense, that public scorn can be transformed into hidden power, that the story belongs to the one who tells it best, and that true retaliation is never rushed. It is delivered when it can shatter, not merely sting. Every insult, every attempt to make you small, is an opportunity to rise unseen until the moment you choose to be seen. And when that moment comes, it will not be in anger, it will be in inevitability. For the greatest revenge, as Machiavelli knew, is not to survive humiliation, but to use it as the very stone upon which your victory is built.